Greetings! Welcome to another tutorial about Bloomreach XM with XIN Mods. In this video, we're going to talk about how to connect your NodeJS projects to a XIN Mods enabled Bloomreach instance. Let's get into it. So what you see here is a little terminal that's left off in the folder that we made in our previous tutorials. Before you do anything else, just make sure you have your Bloomreach instance up and running. And if you don't remember how to do that, just look back at the very first tutorial. Okay, I'm just going to put this off to the side here. And we're going to use NVM to make sure that we are running NodeJS version 16. And let's create our first little project. So what we'll be doing is we'll be creating a project that is going to house a bunch of test cases that will allow us to probe different parts of the content that we have stored in our Bloomreach instance. And so it's all recipe related, so let's call them recipe tests. There we go. Go in there, create a new Node.js project. All good. That's me. Yes. It's all good. So now if you have a look, you can see that there's a package.json that looks very basic. So next thing, I'm going to start my web store and load this package.json as a project. So I'll see you in a bit. Great. It's done. So I open it up as a project in WebStorm. You can see the package.json. Let's make that font a bit bigger for everybody. There we go. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to add some dependencies that we'll be needing to get the XIN Mods modules going. So because we're going to be making some test cases, let's include Mocha. And for now, let's just include the XIN Mods module. There are some other helper modules that we'll get to later that have some additional functionality around caching and that kind of thing. But for now, we'll just stick to this one. And we'll also need a dev dependency, is the core.js. There we go. Right, so let's run npm install. It's take a while. And it's done. Good. Now let's create our test folder. Let's mark it as actually a test root. And let's create our first test. So what we'll be doing in this video, it's very simple. We're going to connect to Bloomreach using our APIs, and we're going to be retrieving a single document. So let's call it connect and read. Right. So yeah, so the thing that we will be retrieving is a document that we created in our last tutorial. So as you might remember, we created a recipe document type, and we created a document of the recipe document type that looks like this. It has some images, some ingredients, and if we want to know exactly at what path it lives, we just open up the console app and we navigate to the document here, and then at the top here you can see the path that we'll be retrieving, and this is the path that we'll need. So let's keep that in the back of our minds. So knowing that, let's start creating our test. So XIN Mods, XIN Mods, there we go. And then and it's just gonna house a single spec. It's gonna be asynchronous because we're gonna be invoking some APIs. So to get started, what we're gonna do is we're gonna call the function connect2 on the XIN Mods module. And if you have a look at the parameters, first it'll need a URL, which is the base URL at which your Bloomreach instance is deployed, which for us is localhost 8080, and then username and password and some additional options, but we'll just stick with the first three for now. So let's say that, and we haven't changed our password yet. It's admin. Obviously, when you're deploying this, you won't be hard coding this type of thing into your code base, and you will also not be using the admin user. Instead, any user that has the REST API group will be able to log in. But for now, we'll keep with admin. Then we get what's called a Hippo Connections instance. I haven't gotten around to renaming it to Bloomreach Connection instance yet, but that doesn't really matter. Hippo is the name of the CMS before they got purchased by Bloomreach. So now that we have a connection object, we can actually ask it to get a document by its path. You can see here there's some other things you can do, but for now, get document by path. And if you remember, just grab this path here, copy paste that in here. Okay, got that. Great. So this returns a promise. This then waits the promise to resolve, and then we should be getting the document back. So let's output it as a JSON object. This. And let's run this as a debugging mode. There we go. Great. So this is a little small down here, but if you have a good look, you can see that we have a connection object, and we have a document here. And this document contains mostly all of the information that you saw in the console. So you can compare it real quick. And this is actually these are the values in one of these subnodes. So each of these nodes are representing the document in a different state. So you got draft, preview, and live, I believe, something like that. So the green one is the one that usually you'll be retrieving with the API. You can see here, things like creation date and all the values of the fields are the dot items subthing. So you got summary and title, summary, title. When you retrieve a document, by default, the API strips out the namespace from the JCR node values. You can, if you really want to, you can preserve those, and you have to pass in some options here. But it's not something we want to do in general. Great, and we have our ingredients here. So there were 2 ingredients, flour, 120 grams. Let's see, flour, 120, water, 500. There you go. So that's great. So we've only had to write a few lines of code to retrieve our very first document. So that's excellent. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this.